How emotionally aware are you? Your answer to this question will determine the quality of your relationships with yourself and others. In this video, I sit down for a conversation with Emotions Coach Jiselle Gilliard for her podcast, the Mighty Emotions Podcast. And this conversation is a candid story of my journey down the path to self-love and the emotional lessons that I learned along the way that led to me being able to have open, honest, supportive, connected relationships with myself and with others. All of which has helped me be able to do the work that I do in guiding others through that same process. You can check out Jiselle on Instagram at mighty_emotions, and you can find a link to her podcast in the description below. All right, that's all for now. I hope you enjoy the conversation, and I'll see you on the other side.
Okay, so welcome to another episode of the Mighty Emotions podcast. This is a fun one. I have my friend Michelle here with me. She is a personal growth and self-love coach, and she has an amazing program that we're going to dive into later on in the episode. But this is a chance for you to understand if you're interested in going on a self-love journey, if you know this is something that you want to work on, to understand someone who has been there, done that, and now supports women on that journey as well. So welcome, Michelle.
Hello. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much to agreeing to this. So let's dive in right away. You let the audience know who you are, what you do.
So, as you said, I'm a personal growth and self-love coach. And I'm hesitating because I'm constantly reiterating this statement, but I would say where it's at now is I help people-pleasing perfectionists with a history of toxic relationships heal their relationship with themselves so that they can show up more authentically in their lives and relationships.
I love that.
Yeah, that's the work that I do, and I've been doing this for 5 years now, and I'm constantly seeking to clarify exactly who I'm working with and what I do, because it's such deep work without a clear tangible outcome necessarily. So
Yeah.
it's always that that struggle to really convey the importance of this work and the impact of this work in a couple sentences. As you know, that's challenging.
Absolutely. I mean, even in my work, we help a variety of people with a variety of issues, but the core issue is our relationship with ourselves, right? Like that's really what it's all about at the center. And so I love that you talk about helping people pleasers, helping perfectionists, and that kind of leads us into the show, which is clearly that was a journey that you had to go on as well. So would you have described yourself as a people pleaser and a perfectionist?
100%. Yes, I would say I'm in recovery. It's an ongoing process, many layers to it. But yeah, it's been quite a journey, moving through that people pleasing and perfectionism. In my relationships, I would say that's something that I've moved through really successfully, and now I'm in that process in my business. So we'll get into it, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. And I can totally relate that sometimes the work that we do in one area doesn't automatically transfer to another area of our lives. And that's something that I'm working with my clients that I've been working with longer now is like, okay, you've applied these tools to this area, and now it's just about taking those same tools and applying it to this area, right? But it is a process. So how have you kind of let the audience know like your story and how you've gone from this people pleasing, this perfectionist in your relationships to where you are now? I know that you're happily married and you have a young son, which is why we connected because we have those similarities. But for the audience that is just getting to know you, who is Michelle? What's your story? How did you get here?
Where do I begin? Well, it all started at my birth. Truly, though, right? And this is kind of the work that's been coming up for me lately. In having a son, it's really brought a lot more up to the surface. It's having me examine my own birth story, my own early childhood. And so truly the story does begin at birth. And for me, it's kind of a, I guess, unique situation in that I was unplanned. My parents had me found out they were pregnant with me while they're in university. They were like 3 months into their relationship. So it was all very much a surprise. I was a miracle, as mom said. She wasn't, supposed to be able to have children, so they weren't particularly, careful. Anyway, along I come, and they made the decision to put me up for adoption. So that was the plan. And then I was born. And at that time, in the mid 80s, you would go to stay with in foster care for 6 weeks to make sure that this was the decision that the birth mother wanted to make, and all of that. So they had a family picked out that I was going to be going to. And I went and stayed at this, I'm getting emotional just talking about this. So I went and stayed at this foster home. And my mom, in university, no car, nothing, would bike out there to visit me. And finally, at the end of the 6 weeks, the foster mom, who apparently was very lovely and caring, so that was, a good space for me to be, said to her, like, you know what you need to do. Like, you can do this. You can be a mom. So she kept me. So she borrowed some money, borrowed a car, came and got me, took me home. So that's where it all kind of began. And I'm currently, like I said, in the process. You're catching me at a very vulnerable time. So I'm processing a lot these days, as you know, and we've discussed. But yeah, it was, there was that immediate separation, which I'm sure had some sort of impact on me, right, as an infant. And then my mom and dad, they tried for a couple of years to make it work. Eventually they split up. My dad moved about an hour away. We were very close, my dad and I, when I was about 2.5. When he moved, I would go and stay with him on the weekends or every other weekend or something like that. And it was always really sad having to come back home. Mom and I were close too, but I had a very special connection with my father. And then when he was 4, he moved to Japan. I'm in Canada, so this is on the other side of the world. So we and he kind of made the decision that it was best for everyone if he removed himself from my life. And he was 25. They were so young and trying to figure out their lives. And there's a whole lot more, but this is not his story. There's a whole lot more we could get into there. But right out of the gates, there's sort of this abandonment and this separation and this feeling of, I guess I'm not good enough, or there must be something I've done, because as children, we can't understand the nuances of the situation. We think we're the center of the universe, right? That's how it's designed. So we believe, well, there must be something I've done to lead to this, to lead to him moving away. And then my mother and I moved in with my stepfather. Very different energy than my father. He's lovely. We still have a relationship today, but there was, a bit of a barrier between him and I. And so, all of this led to me having a very challenging relationship with men. So in relationships, as I remember being, 5, 6, like having these deep crushes on boys in my class. Like, it's like I was trying to fill that space in my life, right? And this went on into high school. My relationships were just very intense, and I felt this really strong need to have them succeed. And so I was trying to show up as, perfect and and pleasing, right? Like, don't make a wrong move or they'll leave you. And this continued on through high school, through my early 20s, all through my 20s, even into my early 30s. It was just a history of short-term relationships, disappointing relationships, toxic relationships, because I was bringing this intense, almost desperate, needy, people-pleasing energy to my relationships. Or I was dating people that I wasn't particularly that into, because there wouldn't be that danger of, losing them, the pain of losing someone that I was truly attached to. And so anyway, this pattern repeated itself until my late 20s, early 30s. I was in this on and off relationship with someone who's just so unsuited for me. And it was almost like it had to get progressively worse for me to get it, the lesson to finally land. And that in that relationship, it was the first time to my knowledge I had been cheated on. And it happened 3 times in that relationship. And I kept taking him back and just trying to make it work despite knowing better, right? And third time it finally hit me like a bolt of lightning with absolute clarity. I deserve better. I deserve at least what I'm putting into this relationship. And that really coincided with a lot of the healing work I'd been doing throughout this relationship, and it coincided with me starting my coaching journey. So at the time that I ended things with this person, like full stop, cut it off, blocked him, cut off contact, I was also doing my coach training. So I was learning a lot about myself and about what was truly important to me, and about, who was I at my authentic core, and when I'm acting from that place of authenticity, how do I speak? How do I act? What do I feel? Right? Just really getting to know that once we strip away those layers of societal conditioning. I got really clear on what I wanted in a partner and in a relationship. And then that's when Colin entered my life, my now husband. And I just really vowed that I was going to show up in a more authentic way in this relationship. I was going to have boundaries. I was going to speak my needs and wants. I was going to speak my truth, right? So that was 7 years ago. We are happily married. It's, just such a supportive, loving, playful, encouraging, mutually inspiring relationship, like I saw out there. I knew it was possible, but it just, it took me doing that work to really show up for myself, to find that and create that. So that's it in a nutshell. That's a lot.
That was
I'll pause there.
beautiful. I mean, thank you so much for your vulnerability and your honesty, and like your authenticity just is a theme throughout this all. Like you sharing from the very beginning how your early relationships with your caregivers then led to the relationship dynamics down the line, and how learning this stuff about yourself when you were starting your coaching and connecting to yourself in this way and getting clarity around yourself, and then choosing to show up authentically led to, this relationship with your partner. And I loved how you said that you saw it out there, that you knew it was possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that you did the work to find it yourself. So, oh my God, so thank you so much for sharing that. So beautiful. There's so many nuggets in there that I want to touch on. Um, just thinking back, I mean, you said that you were getting emotional just sharing that. What were the emotions that were coming up for you?
Mm. It's so hard because I would consider myself an empath. And so as I'm telling that story, I'm picturing my mother at that time, and I'm feeling for her and what she was going through, and her fear and her power in making that choice. And then I'm feeling, for me, like as a baby coming, that reconnection, and then I'm feeling as a mother, imagining, just trying to imagine, like sending my baby away for, being apart from them for 6 weeks. So yeah, it's all of that. It's just, I mean, it's love, it's sadness, it's,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, grief, it's joy.
Yes.
There's a lot in there.
I love that, because this is highlighting for people who are listening or watching this that that's that's what it is, right? That's what life is. It's all of
Mm-hmm.
that mixed together. Like so often we only want the joy, or we only want the love, and it's about, like, the reality is, whether we'd like to or not, we're going to feel all of it, right? These experiences have so
Mm-hmm.
many layers to them. So thank you for sharing that. And I want to know, when you're thinking about your experience, how much fear played into the relationship dynamics, you think? Because you were sharing this like people pleasing and perfectionist behavior that you had in these early relationships, or only choosing partners that were not really aligned, or not, super available so that you wouldn't get hurt. And me as an emotions coach, I'm hearing all the fear behind that, right? So talk a little bit about that.
I think ultimately it's just fear of abandonment. That's the core wound for me. That's the big story of my life. It's like my dad moved away, right? So, um, and that was just so painful. And so I think, and I wasn't aware of that. I was aware on some level, but I wasn't aware, I didn't have the awareness I have now. But on some level, that fear was always there in the background, that if I make the wrong move, people will leave me.
Yes. And just sharing about the kind of behavior that you engaged in to try to escape that fear or run away from that fear. And what I want people to kind of hear when they're listening to this is that that fear of abandonment only existed because you had been abandoned, right? Like your mom had put you in this foster care for the 6 weeks, your dad had moved away. So the abandonment had already happened. So it's like not
Mm-hmm.
wanting it to repeat itself is the running from it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then ultimately, running from it led it to repeating itself,
Right.
right?
And thus the cycle continues. Yeah.
Absolutely. But like every time it would happen, it just compounds and compounds and compounds, right? So when you started doing your coaching work, I'm sure all of these emotions and stuff came up, right? And you had to look at it and face it. So what was that process like?
I remember I knew that one of the things that had to change was using my voice, really truly speaking my truth. Um, because I didn't do that. I kept a lot inside in my relationships prior to my one with my husband. And I just let a lot of things slide. And I really just put all the focus on my partner. Like, what did they want? What did they need? What was best for their schedule and their everything, right? So, if I had plans to go out with friends and they called up and wanted to hang out, well, boom, there go the plans with the friends. Like, I'm going to hang out with them. Or if I had planned to go to a workout class in the morning, but they were sleeping over, I would cancel the class and like spend time with them. Right. So it was just, and also there was this fear, especially at the beginning, that every time I saw them, it would be the last time I saw them. So in between, hanging out, if I didn't get texts throughout the day, if I wasn't in contact with them, if I didn't know exactly when that next hangout was planned, like, that anxious attachment was just rampant. Right. So I always called the beginning of relationship just this tidal wave of emotion, because it was like painful. Like I hated it because there was just so much uncertainty and fear in that process. And that was there with Colin too. But I had a lot more awareness um, as I was doing this work on myself. I could recognize what was happening, and I was doing a lot of self-management through that. So it's like, rather than blowing up his phone with texts, I would just tell myself, you have a connection with this person. Trust in the connection you have when you're together. Trust that things are going to work out as they're meant to, right? And I would just really have to like do a lot of self-soothing through those moments of anxiety. Um, but where I was going, I kind of got sidetracked there, but where I was going with is like, okay, I have to speak my truth. So I remember this one instance, which seems so small and silly when I think about it now, but it was the first time I really set a boundary with him. And it was because he was late. He'd be late to come meet me or come pick me up or whatever. And, 15, 20 minutes late, I'd be standing outside work, waiting, and just getting like more and more anxious and frustrated. And it's like, I could have been inside doing something else, like just let me know. Right. So I was like, I have to talk to him. So I remember that conversation, like the fear. I had like so much fear in my body having to push these words out of my mouth, just saying, listen, this is the impact it has on me when you're late. I would love, what I need from you is to try to be on time. And if you're not going to be on time, let me know so that I can adjust my actions. Right. And he received it and he was like, okay, he heard it and he adjusted. And from that point on, he'd let me know if he was running late or he was on time. And I was like, wow, like imagine it's just that easy. So yeah, and I mean, it's such a small thing, but that was a huge turning point for me. And I was fortunate that he was a safe person to do that with, because he could hear me and respond accordingly. So it was a whole new beginning for me.
Yes. Oh my God, you said so many great things in there. I loved you talking about, I mean, yes, him being a safe space was so important, but talking about soothing yourself through the emotions before taking an action or before responding to the other person, so important. So many times people want to set boundaries without acknowledging that there's all these emotions that are preventing you from setting the boundaries that you have to like digest and ingest and get clear on. Trusting, that was
Mm.
huge for me too. And I love that you talked about the emotions were still there when you got into this relationship with your now husband, right? It wasn't like, oh, I did all this work from these past relationships, and when I got into this new relationship, all good, didn't have to deal with any of that. It was like, no, they were still there, but you dealt with them, and that allowed you to move through it, right? And I relate so much to that because my story is so similar. When I decided that I was going to date in a healthy way and I did the work on myself, actually getting in the relationship with my now husband was the practice. That's when I was like, oh, okay, I guess I have to actually act or actually respond differently to life, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so many good things in there, so many things that people need to hear because I think that they think, oh, a self-love journey, I'm just gonna do all this journaling, I'm just gonna do all this writing, it's gonna be fine. And it's like,
And now I've
actually,
arrived. Yeah.
I have arrived,
Yeah,
right?
the
But
end.
we have to like do it in real time, in real life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, apply that knowledge and that learning. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And
and
so
that continues, right?
exactly, right? It's ongoing and but it's like you get better with practice, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
now, the first time you set that boundary with your husband, I was like, oh, and now you're like, oh, if I need to set a boundary, I'm just gonna
I'm
let
like,
you know.
here we go. Yeah.
It's just amazing, right? It gets
This
so
is what
much
I need.
easier. So I want the audience to know more about your work, but before we dive into that, there's another emotion that I think is common in a self-love journey that I would love to hear your experience with, and that's shame and how we feel toward ourselves and what we think about ourselves and that self-critical voice that you're unworthy. Like I think that that was such a theme in my life, having the childhood that I had, having the adolescence and all that was when I started doing this work, it was like, I am broken. Something's wrong with me. I'm not worthy of love from anyone. And there was so much shame to work with there. So I would love to hear your experience with that.
Mm-hmm. So when I think back to that last relationship before my husband, there was so much shame in there because, there was what I believed, the way I believed I would act if someone cheated on me, and then there was the way I was acting. And I was like, what am I doing? And it was just such a disastrous situation the whole way through. My family knew, my friends knew, right? Like nobody supported this. So, in the times where we would reconnect, I felt like I had to hide it. I would kind of go dark. My friends would be like, okay, we know what's going on here. So there was a lot of shame I had a lot of shame in how I wasn't standing up for myself. I was letting this almost addictive need for this connection with this person to override my self-worth. And ultimately it just led to the same result, right? Every time I would go back, the same thing would happen. Like if someone shows you who they are, believe them, right? But it took me a few tries to get there. And like I said, it was the first time to my knowledge that I'd ever been cheated on. I'd always said, oh, if someone ever cheats on me, like that's it, it's over. And so there was a lot of shame there, in that regard. And then when I think to, where else in my life, oh my goodness, the inner critic is so loud because I showed up in most areas of my life with this like longing for acceptance, right? So not just romantic relationships, but friends, my work. I was a hairstylist before coaching, and so there's just this need for like acceptance and approval and validation, and that led to a lot of what I used to call like self-policing. That inner critic was really loud. So it'd be like, oh, that was stupid. Why'd you say that? That was dumb. They're judging you. They think you're, boring, or they think you're a loser, or whatever. I went through a period in grade 5 and 6 where my friend group turned on me and I was just bullied relentlessly for like 2 years, right? So again, it's just another, then another version of that pattern repeating. So yeah, even socially, like it was like, oh God, don't say the wrong thing or people are going to turn on you. So this was such a theme through my 20s, again, until I was like, I gotta do some work here because I was walking around feeling like my inner critic, it was almost like there was this entity right here just over top of me being like, like policing my every move. And so it was at that point in my mid 20s when I started going to therapy. I started getting into yoga and meditation, like my whole sort of self-discovery journey began then. And it took a long time. It was like it took a long time to like peel back those layers. And it just continued to morph. So as I did the work, I started to realize like, okay, I started to become more comfortable in my relationships and my friendships. Like I was more comfortable in who I was showing up socially, but it shifted into like my levels of productivity. Like if I took time to rest instead of getting things done around the house or on my business, there came that finger again wagging at me, right? So I started to recognize, okay, I've got self-worth is now tied to my productivity. So like there's just been so many layers I've had to work through to manage the inner critic. And yeah, I'll pause there because I've said a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love how you called it self-policing because I think that that is such an accurate description where we're just so critical of everything we do and we're needing other people to validate us in every area because we don't know how to do it for ourselves because we feel that lack
Mm-hmm.
of worth, right? So I had the same experience with the frenemies in school where I was bullied and I thought that, these are my friends, so, I don't it was such a confusing time. There was like, why are they treating me this way? But they like me, but at least they accept me. And I wasn't allowing myself to be treated the way that I ultimately deserve to be treated, right? And so all these
Mm-hmm.
experiences add to that shame that we carry and fuel that critic and talking about what we tie our self-worth to, right? So like it
Mm-hmm.
was tied to being a people pleaser and then that shifted and it was tied to productivity and it's always just kind of moving around, right? And so getting that awareness of it and getting clear on what our self-worth really is connected to that authenticity that you talked about earlier. I mean, when I coach people on shame, like shame is really that voice of whose beliefs are this, right? Like, who did you get this
Mm-hmm.
idea from? Where did you pick up this concept that you need to be productive to be worthy, or people need, you need to be validated to be worthy? Like, where did you get these ideas from, and what's the truth? Like, what's the authentic truth?
Mm-hmm.
And when we get that, like you were talking about, that's when you were able to feel comfortable in yourself and then feel comfortable with yourself and then with others and it grows from there, right? So I love
Mm-hmm.
that. I want to know, you coach people on a self-love journey. What can people expect of that journey? What is that self journey? What does it look like? I'm sure it looks different for different people, but overall, can you give people an idea of your work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's about first getting to really know like who are you, like how is your relationship with yourself manifesting through your thoughts and your feelings and your actions towards yourself. How do you think about yourself, feel about yourself, and what actions do you take for yourself? So it's sort of like when you're plugging directions into the GPS, you have to have your current location and your destination. So it's like, where are we starting from? Right. So that's kind of the starting point, is just getting really clear on that, starting to really tune. I call activating your inner observer. So activating this non-judgmental part of yourself that is just sort of sitting back and taking notes, noticing how these thoughts are showing up, what circumstances are triggering these thoughts, how is that making you feel, and what actions or inactions or reactions is that leading to. So that's really the starting point. And then I think it's important to be mindful of what um, recharges or depletes your energy. When I talk about energy, I think about, imagine an internal battery life, like on your phone, right? And there's a lot of thoughts, feelings, and actions throughout our days that drain our energy. And there's a lot of things we can do to recharge our energy. And I think that's a really important thing to be aware of as well, because there's there's so many pieces to that. I take a very holistic approach. So it's like what nourishes your mind, your body, your heart, and your soul. The more we can be aware of that, the more control, power, the more empowered we are to manage our energy, which is going to give us what we need to go through the rest of this journey. That's what my journey looked like. It was first realizing, oh, I'm aware that there's a pattern here, and I'm aware that there's something that needs to shift. And at that time in my life, I was like, well, certainly, my lifestyle could change, because I was an absolute party animal. I was like a hairstylist in Toronto, out 5 nights a week, like barely doing laundry. So like my life was just a shambles. And so I was like, all right, we gotta like get that in order. And so that's when I started taking care of my diet, my sleep, moving my body, right? So doing what you can, what's within your control to empower yourself, right? To really charge that inner battery, because if you're not sleeping well, it's going to affect you mentally. If you're not eating well, if you're not moving your body, all of this is going to have an impact on your thoughts and your feelings. So we can't leave that out of the equation. And then it's about getting really clear on self-worth. What are your particular metrics of self-worth? So as I had mentioned, people pleasing, like other people's validation. My relationships with others was a real measure of my self-worth. My level of productivity, my appearance, all of these things are my level of success, right? All of these metrics that I define my self-worth with, self-worth by. And so it's really getting clear on, yeah, what are those metrics that you hold? Because again, you have to know where you are before you can start to peel back those layers of conditioning and come to that place of really trusting in your inherent self-worth. And that's big, big, big work, right? And that's something that can take time. But yeah, and part of the work I do there too is like really getting clear on the being and doing of who you are, because we spend so much focus on doing, like what we do as a human, but how do we be as a human, right? So what qualities of being, your kindness, your listening, your curiosity, your willingness to grow, right? Like these are all ways of being that are make up who we are, right? So that's part of the self-worth work that I do. And then self-acceptance, right? So like which parts of ourselves have we pushed into the shadows? Again, because of messaging that we've internalized through the years from our caregivers, our friends, our teachers, our whatever, right? All these messages that say, that's too much, that's not enough, you need to change this, right? Like this is not acceptable. So we adjust and reshape who we are and how we show up in the world, because we push these parts of ourselves away. So self-acceptance work is about really like uncovering these pieces of ourselves from the shadow and finding the gifts that these pieces of ourselves can bring to our life. And just learning how can we adjust the dial on these things, right? So that it feels right for us and we can move through the world in a way that feels authentic. And then self-advocacy is a big part of the work I do. So that's, speaking your truth, right? How do you really advocate for yourself? Setting boundaries. I work with people to really find like the wording that feels true to them. And then the last piece is self-guidance. So really learning to deeply connect with your intuition and self-trust, like listening to that inner voice that is so overshadowed by all these other voices we've inherited, right? It's like, what's the part of us that is truly coming from that core essential part of who we are, and deepening that connection. So that's, I've packaged all this in a program I call the Self-Love Program. And when I'm working with people, it can either be a very structured approach, like I take you through the program as I've laid it out, or it can be more working with what's coming up for you in each moment. People are different. Some people want a more structured approach and some people want a more fluid approach. So, the materials that I've created workbooks, videos, guided meditations, all of this, journal prompts to help guide you through all of that. And then we decide which way of doing this work will work best for the client.
That is so beautiful, Michelle. Oh my gosh. And so needed. So needed, because the journey can feel really lonely and confusing and scary. And everything that you described there, I can attest to having gone through myself in a different way, calling it a different thing, but it's essentially, unpacking our past and deciding, who we want to be. What do we really believe? What is our opinion of ourselves? Um, and the emotions that are going to come up with that, going through that, right? It's like whether it's structured or not structured, there's so many feelings and emotions that are going to show up. So having you there to hold space for them and help them move through that rather than running from it or avoiding it, but actually moving through it is so, so powerful. Like, can you talk about when you help your clients, what you see come up a lot of the time?
Yeah, certainly emotions. And in my coach training, we did a lot of work around how to hold space for those emotions and how to, um, guide them through that process of holding space for their own emotions, because we have so many of us have this tendency to just shut it down, push it down, avoid, right? Distract, pick up your phone, whatever, right? So I think one area that I feel I really excel in is noticing the emotion, naming the emotion, and holding space for that emotion with their permission, right? Of course, it's always going to be the client's always in choice, but um, helping people move through that very difficult and very vulnerable process through it to the clarity that comes on the other side. So I've taken clients like deep into an experience. It's almost like a guided visualization, like where are you feeling those emotions in your body? What sensations are here? If you can visualize this emotion, what does it look like, right? So it's like less about the story, like it's less about the story and more about the present experience of that emotion in their body. And it's so powerful. Like people go and, I'm like, I'm here with you, you're safe, we're together in this. And as they move through, there can be this emotional release. Like they might have a really big cry, or they might like just really feel some intense sensations in their body, right? But some sort of release will happen. And at the other side, it's like, whoo, like relief and like clarity, and there's a whole different perspective. And a lot of times they recognize that the fear of the emotion was worse than the experience of the emotion itself. And so that's something that I've seen so many times now, that I trust it. And I think my trust in that is conveyed to that client so that they feel that trust as they move through that experience. And yeah, there's, like I said, there's just so much clarity that comes when we allow ourselves to move through the darkness, right? And walk through the shadows. That we find the light on the other side of that.
Yes, and you're not alone in that, when you
Yes.
have a coach, when you have someone to be there just to I guess shepherd you a little bit through it. Like you've
Mm-hmm.
had to do that for yourself, and you've had
Mm-hmm.
coaches to help you and support you as you were navigating
Mm-hmm.
that and allowing that to come up and integrate and release, and absolutely the clarity on the other side of it of, okay, what gets to change now? Like what gets to be different now?
Mm-hmm.
Wanting to go on the self-love journey, this is why it's so worth it, because in my experience, once you have that shift, you can't go back,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like once you get
Mm-hmm.
to the other side of it, there's no going back. You can't unknow that
Your eyes are
because you
open. Yeah.
yeah, because you've experienced it. So it really does change the trajectory of like how your relationships manifest. And when it comes to a self-love journey and personal growth and all of the work that you do, it's not just about romantic relationships, right? Like it's about more than that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it spills over into all areas of your life. Once really, it's a big part of it is about moving through the fear of the unknown, of uncertainty, right? I don't know what's going to happen if I speak my truth to this person. I don't know what's going to happen if I have this difficult conversation with my employee. I don't know what's going to happen if I quit my job and take the leap into my passion, right? Like there's that, when you're standing on the brink of the cliff, that moment before you take that jump, right, is just terrifying. So, I'm here as the parachute, right, to help sort of soften the landing and provide that comfort in a time that's very uncomfortable. So
Yes, and
yeah,
the
the work that I've,
risks.
yeah, yeah. And in the 5 years I've been doing this, I've worked in a lot of different areas. It's in this online coaching world, it's all about finding your niche, right? That's sort of the guidance I've been getting. And so, initially it was like creative entrepreneurs, small business owners, and now I'm more moving into the relationship space, because that's something that's just really near and dear to my heart, and something that I've really walked through. And not only that, I was a hairstylist for 15 years. So, I mean, that's pretty much the number one conversation you have with people is about their relationships when you're sitting in the chair for 3 hours. So I've heard so many stories. I was unofficially coaching people on relationships for 15 years before I did my coach training. So So
I
that's an
love
area that I
that.
really enjoy. But it's truly can be applied anywhere. It truly, all of this self-love work is just going to allow you to show up more authentically for yourself, so that, maybe it's in your relationships with your family or your friends. Maybe it's your relationships with your coworkers or your staff if you're a business owner. Or anytime there's just difficult situations that we want to avoid arising in our life, and we have to take a stand for what is true to our values and our vision, that's when this work can be applied.
Yes, because I know in my work that relationships are like the biggest source of emotional distress for most
Mm-hmm.
people, right? It's whether it's your
Mm-hmm.
employees, like you said, whether it's your family, whether it's your friends. And at the core of it, if we look at it as a mind map, is you, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
how you feel with yourself and how you feel about like the confidence you have, the self-confidence that you have
Yes.
when you make aligned decisions and you are in your authentic space. But it's not just like a simple thing that you do. There's all the stuff that arise that you have to be willing to look at and face so that you can execute and you can take that action. So I love it. And
Mm-hmm.
absolutely, I mean, no better therapist than a hairstylist. My sister-in-law is a hairdresser, and she tells me, she's like, I'm always doing therapy for my clients because people just feel
100%.
safe and they
Mm-hmm.
open up. And clearly that's an indication of how your energy, Michelle, is so so calming and inviting and safe that people feel comfortable opening up to you. So that's an
Mm-hmm.
innate kind of soft skill that you have for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly. Yeah, absolutely. That's what I hear. And you brought up the word confidence there, and that's something I want to say because I know, or touch on, because really, we're talking about courage and confidence here. The more that we love ourselves, the more we trust ourselves and then the more we trust ourselves, the more confidence and courage we have. So really, that's what this work is allowing you to do, is to show up more confidently, more trusting that even if things don't turn out the way you want them to, you're going to be able to handle it because you've handled difficult emotions before. So yeah, there's less fear of a negative outcome, or so, because you're building that emotional resilience. And that's what I've found is like, all right, I'm willing to take that risk because either way this ends up, I know I'll figure it out.
Yes, and that is where our work absolutely aligns is having that emotional resilience because that's what allows us to, like you said, have the courage to take the action. And I think in those moments, it's like it becomes what's more important in those moments is that we're taking care of ourselves versus how the other person's going to
Mm,
react. Like we learn to through this work that you're helping guiding your clients through, it's like I love myself enough, trust myself enough, value myself enough that I'm going to prioritize taking care of me over
mm-hmm,
how this person might react or feel. I'm not going to take that on.
mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
from a
Oh,
recovering people
yes.
pleaser,
Yes. Yes.
having
I'm
those
so glad you brought
boundaries.
that up. Yes. I just want to say, because that's it. It's like really separating your actions from their response, because everyone's on their own journey. So if something that I say that is coming from a place of my authenticity and my needs and wants is upsetting to someone else, that's their journey, like, and it's not about being unkind, and it's not about trying to hurt people, but it's important to be okay with other people's discomfort, because maybe they haven't fully reached their self-love, they haven't done their self-love work. And so that was a really big challenge for me, but I think that's somewhere that I've come to where I can fully be at peace with that.
Yes. I mean, motherhood is teaching me a lot about that.
Mm-hmm.
If we can go there just for a little bit, because
Mm-hmm.
that's a
Oh yeah.
relationship with our kids
Yeah. Yes.
and learning to be okay with my toddler's tantrums and learning to be okay with
Mm-hmm.
her having big feelings. I mean, how has motherhood allowed you to kind of implement and apply this self-love journey work? Because we're dealing with
Oh
little
my God.
humans that aren't regulated and
Yes.
logical.
Yes. I think a big thing that's helped me through this is just really shifting my perspective. Like, my job is to not to make sure he's comfortable and happy all the time. My job is to make sure that he's safe and cared for. But part of that, part of this is he helping him navigate those big emotions, like allowing him to have them. Because I was raised like, oh, you're fine. Oh, stop it. Like, oh, you're being dramatic. Like my emotions were too big, right? There wasn't space for them. Whereas with Julian, I'm like, oh, wow, I see that you're upset. Yeah, no, you can't have another Easter egg. Like, I know you want them. I know they're delicious, but you've had enough for today. And he's going to have a big meltdown about it. And that's okay. Like, because he needs to learn that he can feel those feelings and survive them and move on.
Yes, I mean, I have a great stash of Easter eggs for myself, but she's had enough.
Yeah, exactly. I can have
I,
more chocolate.
yeah, I can have more. But no, I love that so much that you brought that up about how your emotions were handled as a child, because I think that
Mhm.
when you're probably doing the work with your client, this comes up about if I'm people pleasing or if I'm shutting down how I feel, if I'm focused on how you feel, how were my emotions held space for? How were my emotions dealt with? How did I learn to see
Mhm.
them, right? And I think for a lot of people, with people pleasing and perfectionist behavior, we learn early on to see our emotions and our feelings as not important, to diminish them, to dismiss them, and then we continue that behavior later on in our relationships, right? So would you say that
Mhm.
you learning to feel your emotions, to hold space for emotions, to bring all of that up has kind of shifted your perspective in terms of, or helped you gain more awareness in terms of like how you respond to yourself and your feelings is related to your behavior in relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because there was just sort of this ingrained belief that my emotions were too big and they weren't acceptable, right? Because it was always just squashed or I felt annoying, when I brought my emotions to the table. So, you know, so of course, yeah, that's going to translate into my relationships. So, romantically or otherwise. So it's like, oh, don't let, full expression is like a core value of mine now because it was so contained for so long, right? So it really has been a process of unlearning that and allowing myself to just fully express. And Collins holds so much space for that. As I've been sort of unpacking a lot since I've become a mother, certain things will literally bring me to my knees. Like the other day, I was like on the floor in the fetal position or in child's pose, sobbing about someone on the internet dying, like someone I didn't even know, but it just triggered something. And Colin comes running in and he's like, "Are you okay? Like, what's happening?" I was like, "I just good." He just like sat there with me and he just like had a hand on me and he was just there. Right. And he just knows like that's me. It's spontaneously combust over random things. And he just provides such a safe space for that without questioning and without even needing to know why, he's just there. And so
Yes.
he's been a huge part of me, allowing myself to fully express my feelings.
I love that, and how it's so important to have that support from someone, and how when we go on this journey, we can start to have these healthier relationship dynamics, because we know what we're looking for because we were able to give it to ourselves. So,
Mm-hmm.
once you start doing the work, you're not going to accept the partner that's emotionally unavailable because you know you're looking for that support
Yeah.
and that it's possible. Like I think
Yes.
when it comes to relationships, what we forget is that I'll hear from people a lot of times like, oh, my standards are too high or whatever. It's like, are they too high for you? Like, if you're treating yourself at those standards, then they're not too high, right? But if you don't
Mm-hmm.
even want to give yourself that, then yeah, it's going to seem impossible, right? But it
Mm-hmm.
absolutely is, it exists. And sharing
Yes.
your experience with going through all of this has just really, I think, helped the listeners because it's so human. Like, it's so
Mm.
normal, right? I love how you
Mm-hmm.
talked about feeling annoying because oh my God, that was my biggest core belief for the longest time, that I was annoying for this.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want anyone listening to this to know, if you also have that belief, that it's a lie. It's
Mm-hmm.
not true. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that there is hope to get rid of that. I've done it.
Mm-hmm.
Michelle has done it. There's people who have walked this journey. and who continue to walk the journey, who continue to practice it, who want to help and support you. So Michelle, please let the audience know. I know you talked about your program, but tell them like what your offers are, how you actually support people.
Yeah. So the self-love program, it's my signature program, and it's a group program, because a big part of this self-love work is recognizing you're not alone. That's why you have this podcast. You just spoke to that, right? So there's a community of like-minded souls on a similar journey that you can connect with and hear their stories and recognize yourself in them, and vice versa, because there's just so much power in that collective wisdom. So there's that. When you join the self-love program, you get full access to all of the materials in the online course, and you also have access to the weekly calls for life. So you have lifetime access to this support. I do one-to-one coaching as well, and yeah, those are the two offers right now. So I offer my one-to-one services in a package. It's an 8-session package. We go deep because we have that one-to-one time together, and you also receive full access to the online course, the self-love program, and again, all of the materials for life. And if you want to find out more about me, you can find me on my website, michellerichter.com, my YouTube channel. You just look up my name, you'll find my channel. My Instagram is Michelle Richter. And those are the 3 areas where I'm most present.
Nice.
Yeah.
Everything will be linked in the show notes, by the way. Also, if you have a freebie, Michelle, that you'd love to share with the audience, I'd love to link that as well in the show notes. Is there anything that you typically kind of give people where they can get started?
Yeah, I actually have a new one that I'm working on. So I'm planning to have that finished by this week. I have the one that I've been offering previously. It's called the Broken Heart's Guide to Moving On. So it's for the person who's fresh out of that toxic relationship and they're just feeling really lost and drained. Their self-worth, their confidence, their clarity is just gone. So this is a workbook to help get you started on those first steps towards getting back on your feet and like finding that power again. So I can give you a link to that, but I'm also working on a self-love guide. So it's just again a workbook to help get you started on those 6 signposts on the path to self-love that I shared with you today.
Oh, so beautiful. Thank you so, so much, Michelle. All of that will be linked below. If you are currently thinking, you know what, I'm just getting out of a toxic relationship, or you're on a hiatus because you feel like you can't trust yourself to have healthy relationships, this is such a good resource for you. So definitely check out Michelle. I love seeing your work, following your work. You're pretty active on Instagram, despite being a busy mom and having all this stuff going on. So it's amazing. Definitely go follow you. I'm just so grateful that you were willing to be here today and to be vulnerable with our audience. Do you have any final words for the audience?
I just want to say, this work is so worth it. You can stay in the discomfort of being small in your comfort zone, right? The comfort of the discomfort of the comfort zone, or you can do the brave, courageous work of breaking out of that and just being your full self. And it's just it's a whole other level of living. It's a whole other level of experience when you expand that emotional range. We stay neutral, right? we can stay so suppressed and neutral, but when you expand that, the lows are lower, but the highs are so much higher, and it's so worth it. So that's all I have to say. I've devoted my life to this work for a reason.
Beautiful. Can't add anything more to that. Thank you everyone for listening today. And yeah, like I said, links are below. Check Michelle out. She's amazing and can support you if you are in need of it right now. And I will see you guys on our next episode. Bye.
And there we have it. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you did, give it a like and a share. And if you have any questions or takeaways, I'd love to see them in the comments below. I respond to them all. And you can find all the links mentioned to Jiselle's podcast and to the free downloads in the description below. And check out these videos next. Okay, that's all for now. Sending love. Mwah.